I've always helped people remember who they are and feel into their power, feel into what their gifts and their skills are. I've really helped people let go of what no longer serves them and transform that into fuel for their mastery, for them to shift their life into the positive. The magic happens when you can hear your heart sing. Literally hear your heart sing. I just want you to know you were born for this, that you have everything you need to really do you this lifetime. So let's get started. Let's make magic together. Welcome, 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 everyone. I am your hostess, Joan of Angels. I am welcoming all you indigos, walk-ins, starseeds, and hybrids to a very exciting show today where we're going to be speaking with Geraldine on her experiences as an abductee and a mother of 8 hybrid children. So I actually can't wait to have that experience of talking with her. I'm Joan of Angels. I am a soul awakening mentor, transformational guide, and I am a show coordinator with Portal to Ascension, where we're bringing you conscious media and thousands of hours of programming to discover ancient origins, uncover hidden truths, and recover your true identity. So we're going to bring our speaker on in a minute, but before I bring her on, I want everyone to just take a deep breath with me. Just want to remember and remind us to be in the present time. I'm sending a little bit of love to all of you and to Neil, wherever he may be, Portal to Ascension. So take a deep breath in and let it all out. Good. And then placing your hands over your heart. Take another deep breath in and let it all out. Mother, Father, God, we are just so grateful to be present with each and every one of you. And we ask that whatever wisdom comes through be for your highest good and the highest good of all concerned. And so it is. All right. We're going to tell you about Geraldine Orozco. She's an intuitive DNA reprogrammer and an Ascension coach. And it all started on October 15th, 2013, when she experienced a vivid abduction from her bedroom window, where she recounts being taken on board a ship and meets tall grays who introduce her to her 8 hybrid children. This is very profound. The next morning, she encounters a hypersensitivity to the human electromagnetic field. This discovery initiates a journey to find the truth about what happened. Her first hypnotherapy in June of 2017 resulted in the discovery of repeated abductions originating in her childhood. She recounts her abductions through her regressions, in which she brings forth information regarding the universe and ancient DNA alterations here on the planet that operate to control the population through hidden government manipulations. But her journey doesn't end there. She underwent 4 additional regressions through till March 2018, where she went deeper into each abduction, as well as the history of the universe, so that she could now understand the reasoning behind the hybridization program here on and off the planet and how this program works among us humans. I think it's very exciting. She goes deep into understanding the purpose of Ascension with the utilization of the human technology and the DNA information that comes from this ongoing harvest of energy within the intelligent universe. Whoa. So I have to say, Geraldine, I am so glad you were abducted in 2013.
Thank you so much for having me here. It is such a joy to be here and to be able to share this story with you and with everyone. I think we are in a very exciting time, and it's a perfect time to have these conversations.
Oh, it really is. So I want to forgot to kind of show this, so I'm going to show it now because you're actually on one of them. Let's show some of the upcoming events that we're having. I got so excited that now I'm going to show the upcoming events. Okay. So the first event we want to show, Tina Marie, is the Portal to Ascension show, the PTA show. And that's actually starting. This is a musical variety show that will occur on the 3rd Wednesday of every month. Let me get it up here for you. All right, we've got it going on. Good. It's going to happen on the third Wednesday of every month. It's a 2-hour variety show. We'll have 3 or 4 speakers. We'll have Alan or Neil and or one of our other specialty producers. So we have a host of new producers coming on, and each show will be around a certain theme. And the good news is this is free to register. So just go to the PTA show, ptashow.com. Tina will put up the links. And the first show is it's next week, next Wednesday. So we'll see you there for that. So first thing I wanted you to see. The next thing I want to show everyone is the upcoming Portal to Ascension conference that is coming up next spring. It's a live conference. We have a host of speakers. We're going to be in San Diego at Mariners Village. And I think, aren't you one of those speakers, Geraldine?
Yes, I am. I'm very proud to say that I am honored to be a part of this.
Yeah, I'm really excited you're going to be there with us. And she is, along with a host of other people that you know. Adam Apollo is going to be there. Geraldine's going to be there. General Layden's going to be there. I think Maureen St. Germain will be there. So just a lot of people that you already know. And we hope to see all of you in person. And it is now open to register. So Neil told me we got our first registration for the conference yesterday. So please go there and explore it and look it up. You'll have the links here in a minute. And then the last thing I want to show is 2 upcoming webinars. And one with Mary Rodwell. It's a past life webinar. And then we have a big hybrid conference coming up with Geraldine also in that. So we'll show that. And because I noticed you were a speaker in this upcoming hybrid one. And we want everyone to know you can actually see Geraldine in the hybrid conference coming up. Can't see the date, but I know that's coming up very soon. And if you scroll back up, oh yeah, Neil has a conference coming up, the Ultimate Sound Frequency. And then the first one on this list up here is Mary Votwell. And she's going to be doing her past life work, multidimensional. So we hope to see you at some of those events too. All right. Now, getting back to our guest, Geraldine. Perfect. And I realized you were in all of those events. So that was great timing.
What a wonderful thing to promote them. And you guys do so much work putting these things together. So thank you for putting them together, getting this information out there.
It's a sole purpose, and Neil has this sole purpose of bringing this wisdom out. And I feel I have this sole purpose too. So I love aligning on all of this. And so do you. And so, I was reading your bio and I thought, we really have to start with 2013 and what it was like for you. Because I get that you're a hypnotherapist. You have a clinical professional training. So I'm thinking that this was not in your purview, your realm.
That's right. It was absolutely not. And actually, I became a hypnotherapist after this experience. Before that, I was in event planning, something completely different. But in 2013, I had been focusing a lot on meditation, and I had been having very profound questions about our purpose, the roles that we play as humans, the roles that we play in society, the roles that culture, religion play, and in creating, I guess, our ideas of what it means to have a purpose in our existence, not just career-wise or family-wise, but even more that, I guess, this existential question. And as a result, yes, just trying to understand, what was even the soul. And that took me on a journey of several months, over the course of 3 months, actually, before this event happened, that I really started to meditate about 9 hours a day. And I began to really piece apart the parts of my own self, personality, ideals, concepts, belief systems, emotions, down to the really core of it. And it came to a point of coming to this moment of neutrality, of realizing that I was more of an observer rather than someone that was actually taking a role or a face or a personality. And I think it was at that point exactly that it opened up an entire next level understanding of our reality. And in October, after a very intense week of doing these inquiry questions, is when I had this contact experience, completely conscious and aware. And up until that point, I was beginning to dive deep into the questions of how society came together to form the ideals. How did religion come into play? What does it mean to be a soul? How is it that we seem to be originating from one kind of core? And I think it was that perfect time where now the next level of information about these interdimensional beings came into my experience. And at 3:33 in the morning, an incredibly bright white light enters into my room, blinding light covering all four walls. And I'm really not understanding how such a bright light can enter into a second floor in a very quiet suburb area. And as I get up and go to the window to look, as I'm looking through the many blinds, I'm blinded by this light, and my body begins to paralyze. I am taken out through the window, and I'm on the other side on top of my garage in front of these 6 beings that come out from the white light. And they are very tall, about 7 feet tall grays. And, the communication is telepathic. They remove all the fear out of my body, and they take me on board this incredible white light, which is a lenticular craft. And as I'm stepping into the craft, they begin to direct me down these curved walls into this space where they create these incredibly complex holographic projections around me, very interactive. The craft is very organic. And I see my aunt on board the craft. And I was very shocked to see her. She was in her nightgown. She wasn't conscious. She wasn't aware. And then after she leaves, my eyesight, the entire image changes. This hologram changes into the interior of the craft. And I begin to see the technology of the craft. I begin to see console with a holographic projection of a planetary systems, some kind of a navigation technology that, not even in the movies you see something like this. So I was presented with a prism, a holographic prism, from which 8 levels of information, and from every level would be projected information. The first thing they showed me were alien language, alien symbols that they would just run through as a hologram directly in front of me. And as I tried to capture as much information as I could from the hologram, I realized that the more I kind of let go and kind of didn't really focus on what I was actually looking at, I would start to receive images in my mind. And kind of these concepts were immense. It was, the best way to explain it is that they speak in universes, in infinities. And so that was a very new way of even thinking in that moment that kind of just ripped open a new way of understanding things and seeing myself. They removed that after showing me that information, and they took me to the Pleiades. In the Pleiades, we were taken to the planet Maya, where I was shown the planet Maya. I was shown a council of beings. They said that I was one of these beings. And they took me to another point in time where they showed that I was teaching to large crowds about very complex topics of the cosmos and spirituality. And, I didn't understand if they, at that moment, what that really meant, because I never knew in a million years in that moment that I would be even teaching or talking about any of this stuff back then at all, So after they showed me that, they brought me back into the craft, and they brought out these 8 little lights from which 4 children manifested before us. And the 4 children were, completely different. They weren't just humans. They were a combination of ETs, different species, like gray features, reptilian features, these incredible eyes, really, really just different kind of structure of their bodies. Very thin, almost transparent skin, transparent hair, very light gray, complex. And the connection with them was almost as if, almost like seeing a family member. When you see a long lost mother or a long lost brother, you really have like this immediate knowing that they are a part of you. And it was this incredible maternal instinct that came over, where I knew that I had given life to these beings. They were me. I could see the way that they moved and had facial expressions. And immediately I started to try to think, how was it that I had an entire life and I didn't remember where these children came from, or what experiences led to them. So it created an immediate kind of shock where I realized that everything that I knew up until that point was even more so. I had already been discovering this neutral place, but I realized I knew absolutely nothing. So as a result of that, they showed me the function of the matrix, how everything works at the quantum level. And I was taken back to my bed, and I was laying upside down, looking at the floor. When I opened my eyes, I had burns here next to my cheeks as a result of this. I had my feet were dirty underneath. It was just a very strange experience. My entire body felt like it was hit by a truck. And I wanted to call the hospital. I wanted to call the police. I couldn't fit it into this reality. I just wasn't understanding what reality was at that point, and I knew it was not a dream, but I wasn't sure yet until Monday. And Monday, when I went to work, I started to see the multidimensional body of people. I could feel them. It ripped open these psychic abilities that it took me 3 months to process. And to me, that was my proof that what had happened was more than just a dream or, a state of the mind. It was literally something that had completely opened up my dimensions for me. So that was 2013. And from there began an even deeper search, which was delayed by some years, not really sure if I should go into the topic, afraid, also listening to family that was kind of telling me, if you talk about this, you're going to sound crazy, and you should really consider what it means, So it was like living
That's
a double
an important thing. That's an important thing, Geraldine, for many of us who have that, come from a traditional background or a religious background and then have an awakening. I spoke to a lot of people who had near-death experiences, and they said at some point their families asked them to never talk about it again. They don't want to know. And they themselves feel like I'm crazy for what's happening. So I think sharing that you didn't just wake up the next day and go, hallelujah, bring it on, is helpful.
Yeah.
Yes. So you had to really feel into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I can imagine, because when I came out as Joan of Angels, honestly, my daughter, I thought she would die. Okay.
Yeah.
Her first thing was, do you have to lead with that, Mom? Can't they know you about that? Can't they know you longer before they see that? As she thought. So I do understand your need to stay quiet. So, but what prompted you then to start to come out and share what is going on for you?
Yeah, I think it was a deeper inquiry. First of all, feeling very inauthentic for many years because I felt like I was living a double life and trying to pretend that what had happened hadn't happened. And to me, that was completely incongruent with, seeking truth, because I had already dedicated so many lives to trying to find truth. When I discovered something, it was said, you can't talk about that. So in 2017. I decided to get a hypnotherapy. I had also met MUFON. I went to some of their groups and I began to say, wow, so actually I'm not the only one.
Right.
Maybe I should respect this experience and learn more about it. And when I went into the hypnotherapy, I began to unlock memories of very, very powerful events, of pregnancies, of miscarriages, of contact, of dreams, that my entire life that began to make sense, with what was occurring and what had occurred in 2013. And so that was really just mind-blowing to me. And in addition to beginning to channel information about what the hybridization program was, what does it mean to be a part of that? What is the soul, or is it the genetics? What makes humans so important to be participating in a hybridization program to create more life? And these are genetic modifications of many different species, including humans. So what's the participation that the human has in that, in what's being created? And so it really took me into that rabbit hole. And I decided at that point, it was very clear to me that, this is where I wanted to dedicate my life. And I sold my business literally, when I got back from the hypnotherapy, I quit, sold the business, and started to dedicate myself to this. So it was a very clear, drastic change. And moving forward, went to years of existential crisis from 2017, 2018 were two major years of intense downloads of information that really, it got to the point where I began to question, is this information going to be of service to humanity? Are we ready for this information yet? And beginning to organize that in a way where we can digest and prioritize, what does the human need now for this next step that we have? I knew that this pandemic was going to be occurring, big shift and changes with viruses and with controls being put into society, but also shaking up this, I guess, sleep state that we're in, allowing space for these conversations. So I think we're there now.
Well, we are there now, and I find it really fascinating. So you went through a couple of years of coming to terms with the fact that you had children, and you were actually able to correlate to the times where you actually might have been pregnant. Like, did you, like that you actually could trace and connect with some of those children? I'm thinking that's right?
Exactly.
How did that feel then?
Well, yes, and it's a bit more interesting than that, actually, because what I mean by correlating, when I was 5 years old, I had experience of missing time. Then shortly after that, began dreams of my mother actually bringing a little child with the blonde golden hair, and she was the exact child that was presented to me in 2013. And I knew that in 2013, the moment I saw the girl, I was like, this child has been in my dreams throughout my childhood, and now I understand why, And then after that, there was missing time in 2000. I don't know what year that was, but I was in South America during sophomore year for a couple years, and I had intense missing time. And then directly after that, I got very sick, and that was a miscarriage situation. But I was very, very innocent at that moment. I didn't even know what sex was, and didn't have sex until I was much later after high school. But after that, became pregnant even when I wasn't partnered. So there were these intense moments where I would become pregnant, go through the gestation problem in combination with dreams, vivid dreams of these beings, of scenarios. Sometimes the beings weren't even present. It was just being on top of silver slabs, your legs up, or lights in your face, and then things happening to you. And at that moment, throughout my life, I never linked them because I didn't have the idea, the concept yet of ETs as an option for these kinds of experiences in dreams. So on the body, side effects after that, those are the things that were very interesting. And when I look back at the times that I had miscarriages or anomalous pregnancies combined with dreams, marks on the body, it was directly connected to these experiences like that. So, it's, and these are the things that I hear from my hybrid parents in the groups. It happens in the same way. They go through these very strange experiences with very specific kind of events happening, both medically and psychologically. And it isn't until they begin to piece together and hear other people's stories that you begin to understand that there is a somewhat outline to how this kind of contact occurs. There's some kind of order, everything from invocation in the body to an insemination experience to a gestation process, an extraction process, and then there is the presentation. And so these women and men are experiencing this in this specific way. And it doesn't.
All of those things happen.
Exactly.
All of those things happen in order, and all the women actually experience a pregnancy.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So it becomes very physical.
It becomes very physical, and that's the interesting thing about it. And I guess the other side of it, which is also very important, is the psychological side effects, which is that women and men are experiencing severe PTSD as a result of these experiences and dreams, which isn't something common. Most people don't have PTSD after certain dreams, but when it has this profound connection to the physical, people are actually experiencing trauma during intercourse, during a dream. They can't sleep, they can't eat. It really begins to affect their life because it's difficult to make sense of something interdimensional entering into your everyday physical life. And when something impactful happens, it's hard for the person to place that. So it's a learning curve. And so this is why we're having these conversations, to begin to learn about them and to see how to make sense of the interdimensional. What is that?
I totally understand. I always thought my son was taken. I had it when he was born. I knew I was pregnant the second I got pregnant, and the next day I was bleeding. And I thought, oh, I lost the baby. But I always have felt that the twin was taken. I had been told I was going to have twins, and suddenly, so I had one, but I always felt there was another. But so what was it like then to actually, well, okay, first of all, you obviously found out you're a hybrid too, right?
Right. And that really, that came as a result of an understanding of what the hybridization program actually was. And beginning, in my first hypnotherapy, all these hypnotherapies are public. You can hear them, you can watch them. But I'm kind of going back to past lives and past timelines where I was in Egypt working with the same thing, genetic modification, and also the cultivation and harnessing of soul, life force, for these beings, for the Anunnakis, for these groups, for centuries in the same kind of.
Okay, so your job, tell us again what you did for the Anunnaki then, extracting human souls, or
so they were, giant beings, and they were these Anunnaki. There were also these beings that were these bird-like beings, and so they would harness life force, souls within these orbs that look like the sun, and they would hold on to that, and supposedly this would be what they would be holding on to in those little bags. You know how they have the depictions of the Anunnakis holding these little bags, but there's much controversy about that. But what I'm seeing is that these life force is being utilized to sustain them, and it is what we think is gold, this gold substance.
That's the gold. Okay.
Yes, that the Anunnaki were said to be looking for here on Earth. But I think it has a much deeper, more profound explanation in regards to the alchemy of what the human produces when it has the transmutation process of their life force into its highest level of creation. And so this is something that is cultivated within the body, and something that has been sacred. It's the most divine, pure life force, most powerful essence that has been, genetically modified, socially structured into either producing that or suppressing the production of that for centuries. And I guess this kind of, very occult understanding of what sex is, it's not about, it's about that semen, the life substance that creates life. And the integration of the divine feminine and masculine when it comes together to produce life, this has a profound symbolism that this substance is what is utilized, that the person that manages that substance is the one that has the power over, the shift of timelines, creation, and again, even the manipulation of these worlds per se, because DNA, what we know as DNA, is the source code that directly connects to the soul, right? The soul is imprinting and holding on to that DNA. The genetic information is the database. And so what we're using with the DNA is access to that soul essence, which is then spliced and combined with other races and species that have different structures, different kinds of genetic data activated and deactivated, which are then combined to create different kinds of species. And what the species really are is a product of vibrational frequency that either can access more strands of DNA, have more access to this creative life force, or is genetically modified to not have access to that life force. And unfortunately, many humans on Earth through generations, This information has been deeply suppressed, because if you understand how to cultivate that life force, this is where the human can turn on their abilities in higher levels of intuition, telepathy, remote viewing. You know, we have the ability of moving, even the physical. So these are the tools and the true human, the human potential that we have to reach. And yeah, so
you're saying that they're after our light, that life force that we actually have innately as humans. And
yes.
that life force, okay, so they want our life force because it can change and they can turn it on or turn it off. So I'm getting a few things that I want clear in my head. You're actually saying they can actually create superhumans or genetically modified slower humans by working with that.
Yeah, so the way DNA functions is that only 1 to 2% of our DNA writes the protein that makes up this body. That's if you really understand, that's huge, because we have so many different kinds of cells, and you know, that are creating arms, hands, feet, the eyes. I mean, the complex systems of the human body. The rest of that genetic data, okay, is something that is the instruction manual for the morphogenetic field, which is the non-physical multidimensional body. And it's within this field that we begin to access dimensional data. So dimensional layers of ourselves, in which we can access the fragments of this human body, which is fragmentation of soul essence. The soul becomes fragmented as it comes into different dimensions, which means that it's projected differently depending on the dimension that it comes in. Things will have a different shape, different form, function by different physics even. So the different beings that we interact with are encoded with that specific data to exist within those dimensional planes. If you combine this genetic data, you have a hybrid that has the capability of interacting in more than one dimensional plane. So we have been genetically modified for centuries, since the splicing of the code with the more primate type, right, or the primates. And there's a tremendous jump there in the genetic code between the primates and then the modern human man. So this is a genetic alteration. Then there were several other alterations later on, where blue eyes came out into the Aryan bloodlines. And if you trace back our DNA, we originate in one pool of genetic. All DNA, all organisms have this base code. It's just a matter of accessing, turning on different DNA codes of the code, a genetic database, that you create different organisms. So basically, everything that we do, we're eating, everything that we're feeling, everything that we're thinking, even all of our environment inputs data into either suppressing aspects of our genetic expression or activating. So if you look at society and the timeline of when religion was put in, when we had industrial revolutions, when we had wars, when we had the major we had the Second World War. This is where began some interesting wars of genetics. And this is where we began to understand that certain bloodlines had been cultivated for centuries in royal families in order to produce a very small group of elites, per se, that are a concentration of very specific genetic data, as opposed to the rest of humanity. And that's something that was designed. It was deliberately designed. And I mean, there's so much. You have to do the research, but it is out there. It's not something that is terribly suppressed to understand, what we are. So more so, this DNA, when you begin to activate your DNA, when you begin to activate the suppressed aspects of yourself, most of that has to do with this core life force that we have within the physical body. And that's something that we can cultivate through mindfulness practices. Number one, observation of the body. And then the cultivation of sexual energy, which is the prime matter of creation. And this is both psychological, physical, and interdimensional life force that we need to learn. We have many practices such as, ancient practices in qigong and these kinds of life force cultivations, in which this information is very well known. The utilization, proper utilization of that sexual energy is what cultivates and activates genetic information.
It's a lot to take in here, definitely. I'm just trying to still get over like what it must have been like to understand. I know that you work with other hybrid mothers now, and you have a group called Hybrid Mothers. So, but you seem to be like the hybrid mother that you became encoded to be a teacher or a healer of, or what do you see your role as now?
I'm a student of the human experience, just as everyone else. And I think that to me, the most powerful and wonderful experience was to have the opportunity to dive deep and to ask the questions that I needed to ask to understand what it was. And of course, there is so much to this human experience that we could never really understand fully, because there are so many different levels of understanding that we would need to reach. But the fact is that when I realized that this information has been widely available, it's just the one that seeks the information that can find it and that can understand it and digest it. And the thing is that it's not just about reading and studying. You see, I never read books about any of this. This is all things that I have channeled and seen and experienced through past lives. And when I began to deprogram my past lives, my current life, I had access to past lives. And that's where I started to understand what my role was through history. And how my own genetic information had been suppressed or activated at different times, which link up with certain cycles that we're experiencing as a human race. So, there's many parts to this, and where we're at right now is a very heightened frequency point in this construct of creation that we're experiencing. That's why there is such a major awakening opportunity for so many. And this information is definitely coming out into the mainstream. Many people are interested in contact now, and technology is going to start really speeding up now, which I'm very excited about. But also we need education so people understand what it means to have that technology, and that the human technology is actually the most advanced. So if we understand how to utilize this technology, we will have the opportunity to work with this external technology in something that is harmonious and beneficial for the whole. And I think that's where our mindset has to begin to change from the individual to the whole. It's about unity consciousness. It's about thinking about what's good for me and what's good for the collective, rather than feeding in unconsciously to parasitic systems. And what is a parasite? We become parasites when we ourselves reject that we are source, that what we are, when we reject our own self, our own blueprint expression. This is where we begin to feed off things unconsciously. So when we wake up from that, we can begin to shift and begin to be co-creators rather than just feeding, and taking unconsciously. Consumers, basically. You're no longer a consumer. You're now a creator, which is something that's different.
All right. Well, there's a lot to think about with this. What? I need a second.
Oh, sure.
I just need a second with this. Let me see if there's any questions, by the way, guys. Do you have any questions in here for Geraldine? Out of if you have anything, we will definitely ask her. Tina will put it up, and we'll see. So there's a lot to unravel here, I think. So, but when I looked at you the very first time I saw you, it was like, oh, she's clearly a hybrid. Do you remember how you came to be? Did they show you that? And do you have contact with your children now?
How did I came to be? Well, again, as I was mentioning, we are all kind of hybrids and a combination of everything. But what that means is that so ETs, the idea of extraterrestrial, that's not really, because you have to understand physics and what it means to what we participate in. This world is like a toroidal field. And we are interdimensionally traveling, or we are interdimensionally existing. So these beings are more interdimensional rather than extraterrestrial, because as soon as you leave Earth,
you don't see them in the physical.
Yeah, you're leaving the physical, exactly. So how we come to be is because we are incarnating in the Earth plane, in the three-dimensional plane, and because we've had many lifetimes in other dimensions, we are a combination, a cocktail of all of these bloodlines. So, you know, we have everything within our genetic code. We have everything from the most primal, draconian, reptilian, which is literally encoded in the design of the physical body, you know, with our reptilian brain, the gestation process of the of how the organism evolves from its more reptilian to a human form, mammal, and all the species. You know, anatomically, we also represent that as an expression. So we also have higher levels of, when we activate the 7th, 8th, 9th dimensions of our physical body, we begin to access many dimensions into higher consciousness. So we can have access to beings that are more interdimensional, non-physical, like, let's say, Pleiadians, Arcturians, these kinds of beings. But all of these make up what we are. And what I saw is that 3 main bloodlines make up what we are: a Pleiadian kind of reptilian bloodline, and a red bloodline, which is of the earth, which is probably the more primal. And so these bloodlines combined create what each one of us are. Some of us that have lives in other dimensions, we activate that part of us, and if we do the work, we can remember those lives and we can access the information. DNA functions like a portal. You know, if you know how to work with your DNA, you can access portals into these dimensions. You can bring back, you know, tools. You can healing tools, technologies, understanding about things that each dimensional offers. Now, how did I come to me? I understand that I'm many of these bloodlines, and I also understand that the hybridization program is to sustain the cyclical utilization of human life force within this matrix and multidimensionally. The laws of the universe state that if you have free will, you have to agree to something. There has to be an exchange of consciousness. When there is no exchange of consciousness, that exchange becomes parasitic. So some of these hybridization programs that have been carried out by darker aspects of the draconians, and even Pleiadians and Greys. Greys are just the ones that carry out. It's actually these higher races that manage this information. But these kinds of agendas, a lot of them are more parasitic rather than productive and the reason why is because the human soul, when you have a child, literally a part of you is in the child, in the new organism, and we become connected. And this is a way of becoming more entangled into a dimensional plane. However, if we raise our consciousness and we know how to utilize that entanglement by raising our frequency into the highest consciousness, we can affect the organisms, the children, the offspring that we have as well. But we need to learn how to master our core life force. So having hybrid children can be a plus. It can also be a negative, depending on your understanding of your cultivation of life force. I realized very quickly that some of these programs were more parasitic, and these organisms that were being created were not for the highest good of either myself or the collective. And therefore, reintegrating fragmentation that occurred from that child in order to kind of dissolve this interaction. Because many hybrid parents become manipulated by the hybrid children, in a sense, through their emotions, through the suppression of certain parts of their activation. And this happens through these hybrids. So there are also higher agendas that create these very advanced hybrids, and they can also help the mother, you know, or the father. They can also interact. So this entire system of creation is really about whether we are ready to come into our consciousness and to take responsibility for the role that we have as consciousness. And this is what I've seen with relationships with hybrids.
Well, I understand this. It's very complex. I understand why we haven't even spoken about it yet until today. Very complex. But what about free will in this? You know, like the abduction experience. Or do we agree and we, like, because you mentioned past lives, you mentioned that you had roles to play kind of with this whole DNA agenda during different lifetimes that you remember, and I get that. Where do we make an agreement that we're going to upgrade and go through this? Do people make an agreement that they won't? And what percentage of people do you think are hybrid now?
Yeah, well, you know, the question about free will is a very complex one, that in order to really make sense of that, you do need to understand the physics of what we are existing in this multiverse, because we live in an interconnected system. There is nothing that functions independently from anything at all. So when you understand that, and the fact that millions of things came into play to produce the vessel of your soul, you know, within the process of conception is agreements to experience certain things. And what directs the conception is the intention of the soul to exist. So as long as the intention of the soul is to exist in specific experiences, that is the agreement. So you know, coming into the human body to experience interdimensionality is ripping up paradigm which we have believed for a long time, which is the matrix.
And it's a privilege.
It's a privilege, but it's also
extraordinary.
Yes. It's potentially, though, our responsibility to either rip up that the illusion or to keep sleeping in that illusion, you know. And it really isn't until you rip up that illusion that you even have a first step into understanding the kind of agreements that you've made in this lifetime, in other lifetimes with your families. I mean, our vibrational frequency becomes resonance, and the moment it becomes into this bloodline of your ancestors, your entire ancestral lineage, that's huge. There is an agreement vibrationally, and there's also opportunities that come with your life. You can end cyclical patterns of trauma, and you can also continue them. Those are the options. So within those options, you have to choose and understand the cause and effect of that. And so along with that, you have generations in your bloodline that have participated in hybridization programs of either aspects of yourself that were dormant and unconscious as to the cause and effect, or that were aware. So, you know, there is no right and wrong in the way that I look at these things. And even when I talk about parasitic and non-parasitic, I believe that the free will that the human has is the opportunity to either wake up consciousness and choose or not. We're choosing one or two of those, essentially.
Right, I see. And so it seems like in other lifetimes, if we're having hybrid children in this life, most likely we may have had them in past lives also, is really what you're saying also.
Absolutely.
So,
and the interesting thing about that is, go ahead, Joan.
Go ahead. Well, you regress people, right? I mean, you are a hypnotherapist now. Okay.
Yes.
Just clarifying. So now this is your experience too.
Oh, yes. And I really try to only speak on experience of what I've seen with my clients, through my own experience, and also navigating these dimensions, you know. And of course, you know, I could be completely wrong. This is just from one perspective, but this is what I have to offer. But what I do see, and that we don't even need hypnotherapy, is that contact does run in the families, even in my own family. When I started to come public and we did the film Extraordinary the Seeding, for example, my family saw for the first time that I had contact, and then the stories started to come out. oh yes, I've had this contact, I have this contact, I've seen this. And it was like, why weren't we talking about this before? And it's almost like it's like you sober up from being drunk all your life. You're not conscious that all of these things are happening. But what is it with us humans that we suppress our own human experience? It's very sad. And the moment we wake up and we realize we have permission to talk about them, we begin to open new railways of seeing and thinking and feeling, and this is essential for the human, that we have these conversations to begin to activate parts of us that have been dormant. I think that it is part of really the survival of the human race moving towards the future, because things are going to start speeding up really fast now in the next 3-4 years, where we're going to hyper jump into the future. And the future is about the utilization of these higher abilities. And those that know how to utilize their intuition and their abilities are going to be the ones that are going to be healthiest in this human experience.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think those who are aware, especially of their interdimensional contacts, will be better prepared also for what's coming.
That's
and for
correct.
This ascension process. Yes. This, it's such a complicated subject. And I didn't know it was so complicated actually until I started hearing you speak last year or the year before, because you're seeing things in fractals and in interdimensional planes. And for some of us, it's actually harder to actually see that. Now, I understand you're an artist also, right?
Yes. I began to paint actually in 2018 after a near-death experience, which was also very interesting.
So you had a near-death experience too. Okay, you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, what I realized through the experience, and this is how I know that the more that you sit in meditation and begin to deprogram and activate, that you begin to access the true essence of the human, and that what we are here, really let go of any idea that you have a mission or a purpose, is just as existence is to create and to experience through creation. And I think that's really the thing, that if we remember that, it will also get off of any kind of pressure that may be an illusion into the core of the human to find your true self, because that's where you start to realize that the potential creation of the human is actually what is so valuable for these hybridization programs, for governmental programs, and for many other systems that are targeting that creative life force of the human. But if we know how to channel it, through the activation of meditation, I began to channel light language. I began to channel, all kinds of information. I began to, all of a sudden, from one day to the next, paint. Really, after the near-death experience, and it occurred in Mexico. But in that moment, I was taken into the white light, into a tunnel, and given a choice, like, do you want to leave, or are you going to continue doing what you're doing here, what you've agreed to do? And it was very clear what it would be like to die and to go back into a reincarnation, because at the moment of death, your frequency defines where you're going to experience next. And so that's why there's a certain way to die even. And who talks about this so beautifully is Dan Winter. He understands the physics of it, because and it's absolutely correct, because it's what I've experienced and seen as well, that there is a certain way to transition. And ancient cultures have been studying that for a very long time, since ancient Egypt, all the ancient cultures around the world, South America, Japan, India, have been learning how to prepare and how to navigate death when we leave the physical. And that's really, really important that we understand that. So after I started to paint, I began to paint what I was seeing in the interdimensional realm, including the chakra system, energy systems. And it was beautiful. And it felt like something I really, really had to do. And it was healthy. When I don't paint, it's like stagnant energy, so it's important for us to find our creative out, what is your creative output that you need. And you too, you're an artist, Joan. I think and I don't know the story how you started to paint, but you paint so beautifully.
So the truth is, it was 2013 also. October
Wow.
31st, 2013, where I received these instructions. And the first time they said paint 33 angels in 30 days, I said, well, I can't paint faces or eyes. And then I heard it again. And then by the third time, I knew that either I said yes or this opportunity would never come again. You know, that it was the opportunity I had been asking for. And what I found so interesting is that they didn't tell me any more than that. I was just instructed, paint 33 angels. And the assumption was, we will not tell you anything until you've completed this. And the other feeling I had was that they had reached out to thousands or millions of people. And they just were waiting for those who said yes. You know, and I raised my hand and I said yes. But it too has taken me. When I came to the desert, I got named Joan of Angels by someone. And it took me 7 years to come out. Not that, I mean, I called myself Joan of Angels, but I would say it's taken 7 years to understand my presence in the world and why I've been called and what I'm here to do. So I certainly understand how from 2013 to 17, you might have just not, you know, whatever you have to do to get to the next level with the material we're being given. I think it's quite a wake up. And as I feel your energy, you know, I really do feel you came in with a very strong mission here that has to do with bringing in this wisdom and teaching people how to handle it.
Yeah,
sure.
it's exciting and it's a blessing and it's a gift. And I'm just very humbled to be able to share, you know, even the opportunity to share is amazing. You know, I think that when people find their purpose, everything that will help that just comes into place organically. You don't even need to try. You don't need to look for it. It's a collaboration on a higher level. Like you and I have collaborated to do this conversation today. You know, and you know.
And we know. There is a certainty and a wisdom and a knowing, which I find really amazing. Yeah. Also, so I'm amazed that the time has flown too. Oh, yeah. So what are you offering to people, Geraldine? How can they interact with you besides watching you?
Yeah, so I do something called DNA reprogramming, and I also do hypnotherapy, of course. So I'm very happy to offer that for anybody that would like to dive deeper, anyone that is experiencing blockages and want to end those blockages and create new ways of thinking and experiencing life. That would be a great way to do that. And you can reach me at Geraldine Orozco. If you're an experiencer and are looking for support, I have an incredible support group with beautiful people, experiencers. We gather once a month, and we also have programs and educational stuff every second part of the month. So yeah, you can check that at hybridmother.com. And I have a lot of free content on my YouTube at Geraldine Orozco that you can check out and subscribe if you would like. Thank you very much, Joan.
You're just such a beautiful person. I'm so excited we're going to a conference together this weekend.
I know, me too.
Okay, and now I'm really even more excited to just talk to you and everything. We really appreciate having you on the show. Guys, you can see Geraldine on the Hybrid Conference. You could see her live come to San Diego live for the Ascension Conference next spring. So you could see all your favorite speakers and get to know them even personally, which I think is quite an opportunity. And do you have any other events coming up that we want to tell them about?
You already told them about all the exciting ones that I participate. So thank you for doing that. That's it.
All right. We love you very much. Thanks for joining us, Geraldine. We will see you soon. Okay, guys, that was amazing. I don't know about you, but I'm blown away by her energy, by the vast depth of her knowledge. It just seems so expansive. I am a hybrid mother myself. I don't think I look hybrid, though, so maybe I'm not a hybrid. She certainly looks like a hybrid. And by the way, one of our next guests on our PTA show is going to be Marina Serene, who is also another hybrid. So let us know in the chat and in the comments below how you love the video. And meanwhile, please like, subscribe, and share if you're new to the channel. Check out the PTA show that happens next week. Check out the Ascension Conference and upcoming the Hybrid Conference. Check out joanofangels.com. And we love you. Meanwhile, remember, we are all miracles. Step into the miraculous. Remember who you are. And really such gratitude that we are all in this learning process together. We will see you all next time. Have a blessed